Hi, I'm Papa Keith, and I thought I'd share with you today how I convert my music cassette audiobooks onto computer files so that they can be played with Audible or my phone applications. So first things first, you're going to need a tape deck. Now I use a standard hi-fi tape deck with phono outputs. You could use a Walkman, but I certainly prefer the larger device, particularly if you've got fairly old audio books to copy. If you're copying onto a computer with a sound card which has got a line in, you can probably get away with one of these cables. It's simply a phono output from the tape deck and it plugs straight into the line in on your sound card and you should be ready to go. If, like me, however, you are using a laptop, the microphone socket on a laptop does not always work too well, so I've just purchased myself a little cheap USB audio card, as you can see, and that plugs direct into the tape recorder, and then from there it goes straight into a USB port on the computer. You can see as an input there is also a mini jack, so you could play direct from a Walkman or indeed an MP3 player. I use Audacity to record the file input as it comes in from the tape recorder. This is a free software solution and it's probably one of the best of its kind. Just for information, you will need to install some additional drivers in order to convert the files into audiobook files, AAC files on the end, but we'll talk about that later on. Okay, this is the Audacity setup. You can see this particular version is 2.3.0, so things might change slightly for yours. We're setting up the environment here, so down to preferences, and then in terms of devices, you must select direct sound. Obviously your playback, your speakers, whatever you choose to do, and then here I am connecting to my USB audio device. I tend to change to mono. Personally, I don't see the point of having an audiobook in stereo, but that's obviously a personal choice. And finally, I'm choosing to play back as I'm recording. That way I can listen to the audiobook as it's being recorded and see if there's anything goes adrift. And that's the settings all ready to go for Audacity. Okay, ready to start recording. Hit the pause and the record button. Hit your tape recorder, switch it on. As soon as you hear the sound coming through, release the pause button and away it'll go. And then that's your job. It'll all go through from there. Okay, so tape's finished and switched off the tape recorder, and now what I'm doing now is I'm trimming out the leftover space at the back of the file here, where I've let it run after for a couple of minutes, and I'm just zooming right the way out so that I can see the full file, get rid of most of the information, and then I'm able to zoom in on the last minute or so that I've got to remove and just pull that out with a degree of accuracy. So as you can see there, I'm just going to select that little bit of data, wind it back to just after the audio is finished, and then just hitting the delete key, get rid of it. And then now I'm going to save. So what you're doing here, you're exporting the file, and in this case, because I've done some more, it's defaulted. You can see it's defaulted to M4A files, and I'm simply taking the previous file number and overwriting it with the changes and then saving it. I then get the opportunity to edit the metadata tabs there, and that's what I'm doing, and then I'm simply going to press the OK button there, and then that'll start to export out. Now if you haven't got the right DLL for exporting to M4A files, just before this happens it will ask you, and it will prompt you to go to the website where you can pick up the file and download it. If you have to do that, then just restarting Audacity tends to take care of any file issues, so you can just get on with it and just let it run through. So depending on the file, of course, and the whether it's a stereo or a mono file. This particular case it's a stereo file, but normally they would be mono. Um, this will just take a couple of minutes, as you can see, around about a minute to do a 5-hour audiobook. So, and that obviously depends on the speed of your computer as well. So this is just ticking along, and then as soon as that's done, we'll be in a position where we can start again with the next file. There we are, and then I simply delete the existing track and then start all over again. I use chapter and verse from Loden Software to make my audiobooks. Obviously, as soon as you've recorded all of the tapes and you've got all those stored away on your hard disk, it's then time to assemble them all into one book or a multi-part book if you've got hours and hours of work. I don't tend to split up into chapters. I simply take one side of a cassette as a chapter and just go from there. So this is basically how we collect all that information off. And you can see here, this is chapter and verse. I've opened it up. I'm just going to all my files that I've got for this particular audiobook. This is a multi-part one, so there's lots and lots of files there. Bring in those 8 files, and then they just get brought in automatically. Merges them all there. Does some analysis on time. I think that's an old technology thing, so I tend to ignore that. You can see my chapters there, which are all the sides of the tapes, and this is the metadata. This is where I use to edit the titles of the book and the artist. You can see I had a little panic here on the artist in a minute because I couldn't remember how to spell the name, and as it turns out I spelled it incorrectly anyway, but we're not going to lose any sleep over that. I can soon change that back up, and I tend to use MediaMonkey to do any editing of metadata tags on music files. So I'm just tidying this up here. This is picking up the data from the last time I've run it, so I'm just tidying up here and selecting the artwork here. I tend to use the web to find an icon, find a graphic for the book, and simply download that and drop that in. This case, because I've got 4 parts, I've just used GIMP to add a number to each one. And you can see now I've got all that information in, and I'm just simply changing the name to suit book 3 and letting it run through. And then all that does, that merges all the files together and then generates one complete audiobook. Obviously, again, depending on the speed of your machine, will determine how long this takes, but it just takes a couple of minutes just to do. And there we are, pretty much done. Job done. I found that if you rewind the tape or fast forward the tape to the end and then rewind it back again to the start position before you do any recordings, that does tend to eliminate any tape wobbles or tape bindings that you may have on the tape, particularly if it's been used in a Walkman. So it's always a good tip. Just let that tape run through, and your recording and playback should be smooth.